Hey guys, this is the presentation of my blog that I've created throughout the course of this class. As I go through, I have my computer pulled up next to me. I'll be showing some pictures that I utilize throughout my blogs. So yeah, to get started, the genre of horror that I decided to focus on for my blog was supernatural and paranormal horror. To give a little overview of supernatural, the word supernatural itself is defined as it's sort of attributed to some sort of force beyond scientific and human understanding. Supernatural and paranormal horror films, bring the audience into this unworldly setting, into a realm which is kind of beyond human boundaries. Many films in this subgenre of horror often revolve around some sort of supernatural entity or a paranormal phenom, which to some extent defy the laws of nature. As viewers sort of enter an inexplicable realm while viewing these supernatural and paranormal horror films, many different fears of emotion are evoked. These films, greatly dive into into the unknown and explore, concepts which travel far beyond basic human understanding. Supernatural horror films focus more on supernatural beings such as ghosts, demons, witches, and any other figures which have some sort of supernatural characteristics. Themes like possessions, hauntings, and curses are very apparent in these films. And I just have a picture here. This is one of the most prolific supernatural horror films. That's Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street. So yeah, and then getting into I kind of just did a little overview. My favorite and what I found most frightening supernatural horror film. I'll touch on it later. I think it is easily Insidious 2010. The film follows the Lambert family and their son. The kid Dalton enters this coma-like state, and he has this ability to travel in his sleep to this other realm called the Further. And the movie pretty much follows his family and their journey through these hauntings that they're experiencing as their son is stuck in this coma state. So going on to my second entry, I kind of just gave a little intro, but so my blog too was about the film Insidious. As I said, it's probably one of my favorite horror movies. So I kind of give a little brief explanation, but I'll show a little picture quick. One thing that I found, it was very relevant throughout the film is this red door. The color red is kind of portrayed throughout the entirety of the film, and it gives, I think after I watched it, the color red, I kind of just viewed it a different way between the red door, the demon who's haunting Dalton with the, bright red face. I just think that color red pops in various points throughout the film, and it, kind of creates this dark, terrifying sensation. Diving a little bit more into the story, as months pass by, after Dalton enters this coma state, the entities become more and more present. The family decides to move because I think it's the house that's haunted. This is until they decide to get help from Elise, who's a paranormal investigator, and her crew. And Elise pretty much explains to the family that her son, or that the son Dalton is being, there's these entities that are trying to enter his body, from a previous lifetime, and they try to feed off the life of humans, and they're trying to enter, take over their bodies in the real world. She explains that Dalton's condition isn't a result of physical ailment, but rather this form of astral projection That's what at least describes it as in the film. Um, I think that, you know, the biggest thing that is utilized throughout Insidious is the strong atmospheric tension. There's tons of jump scares. The whole movie's kind of filmed in this dark lighting setting. It's a little, there's not a whole lot of brightness. It just, especially the place called Further, it's very dark in there, and the only way anybody could see in there is with a lantern. So I think that with sudden loud noises, you know, the jump scares, which will, you know, scare the heck out of you. I think that, it really defines, the qualities of this subgenre, or the paranormal slash supernatural subgenre of horror. All these different elements really, create this sense of fear and doom within the audience while watching the film. And then the director that I decided to focus on for my blog is James Wan. So he's actually director of Insidious. He's also done tons of other work in the horror film genre, such as Saw. That's kind of what put James Wan on the map. He directed The Conjuring, and then more recently he's even gone outside of horror films, and he's worked on action films such as Furious 7. That's the most recent. So here's a picture of James Wan on one of his sets. Going into Wan a little bit more. One thing that Wan, I think, mastered in the horror genre is creating a sense of unease within the audience. I watched a interview with Wan, and he explains that, thought this was pretty odd, but he connects horror films to comedy films in a way. I thought it was kind of confusing hearing him say that at first, but what he was trying to say is that after like a horror or a jump scare or a jump scene in one of his horror movies, the audience will find themselves laughing at it almost, because they almost question why they got that reaction out of it. And so that's kind of the way he connected horror films to comedy, and I just thought that was pretty interesting. And then also on Wan, just a list, like I said, I listed off some of his most prominent horror movies, such as Insidious, The Conjuring. Overall, I just think Wan is he's really, he's probably one of the most prominent modern horror film directors. With his release of Saw in 2004, it became a very successful franchise, and he's continued to do so with franchises like Insidious and The Conjuring. Wan really, in all these movies, he really utilized, skillful storytelling, which really keeps the audience engaged. In addition to all the horror elements, there's a story behind all these different films, which I think, he's ahead of the game in that sense. And then just overall, I mean, I think that I decided to do the supernatural slash paranormal horror or subgenre of horror, because I think that these are the movies that really stick out to me the most. I think that the audience is really able to connect to these types of films more than any other type of horror films. You really find yourself relating yourself to the characters, and you can feel for them with all the emotions that they experience throughout these different haunting stories. And I think that just the different something like the jump scares in Insidious or The Conjuring, the scary faces of these different entities. It's unlike some of the other horror movies that we've watched throughout this course. I think that these are the movies that give you nightmares, and that you picture these faces, and it's something they're these entities are very unpleasant to humans. So overall, I think that that's why I wanted to do some more work on the subgenre. I'm just it interested me the most, and I think it was very it was good to view through some reviews of these different movies and see what other people thought about it. So yeah.